Make that 2-4-2 as the Carolina Hurricanes won on Tuesday night 3-1 to take a 2-0 series lead on the New Jersey Devils in round one of the playoffs. Talk about an absolute night for Frederik Andersen, stopping 25 of 26 to get his second consecutive win of the series, and Jordan Martinook with a 2-point game with a short-handed goal. Safe to say, welcome to Marty's house party in Raleighwood.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers, also the co-host of the Surge Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. And we got a wonderful Wednesday edition of the pod as we get to recap the Carolina Hurricanes 3-1 win on Tuesday night to take a 2-0 series lead on the Devils. And more importantly, talk about Jordan Martinook's fantastic game, a lot of block shots, a lot of shots, 2 points, and helped his team get the win. And Frederik Andersen, being the great Dane that he is, was an absolute brick wall for the Hurricanes to secure the win. And we could hear from Rod Brind'Amour in the postgame, specifically answering my question to him about Jordan Martinook. But before we jump into all of that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, in terms of this game, this was an absolute crazy one from the rip. It was just, as the game progressed, you saw just weird bounces, weird plays that were going on. You could just tell it was a lot of mad scrambles for the most part, but it was a slow start for the Canes. Wasn't really a sharp first 7 minutes for them. And, unfortunately, Jesper Bratt did score the first goal of the game at 3:51. The first period did end 1-0 for the Devils, but as you could tell as the period kind of went along, the Hurricanes found their footing. They were having trouble early on getting the puck in the Devils zone, creating a lot of chances, a lot of whiffed shots, stuff like that. But as you could tell as the game went on, you could tell they were kind of finding their form, and you could tell they were kind of, turning back to their style of play. But the one thing that really did stand out, though, is the fact that you saw them only win 39% of the faceoffs in game one. While in game two, how about winning 49.1%? You will definitely take that. And special teams, once again, stands tall for the Canes. The PK unit, 3 for 3. Fantastic job by them. They're still right now, knock on wood, perfect in the penalty kill. Basically stopping all 5 attempts from the Devils. Hurricanes power play, unfortunately, to go for 3, but they did have some chances. But the main thing was Jordan Martinook's shorthanded goal to get the Canes the lead, which is just absolutely fantastic. But another stat we have to bring up before we jump into the great night that Jordan Martinook and Frederik Andersen had. How about for the fact that while the Hurricanes were out hit 51-31, they had 14 block shots compared to the Devils' 9. That's something that really stood tall for the Hurricanes in this one, was the fact that they were able to put their body in front of the puck and stop a lot of shots, because they do have a good amount of block shots, but to be that far ahead is something that you really got to put your hat on for Tim Gleason and the defense, and even the forwards too, for also kind of selling out. Because from what Rod Brind'Amour said in the postgame, he said, both teams are really doing it. You have to sell yourself. You got to sell the body. You got to put your body on the line. And you saw it from both sides, but you really saw it from the Hurricanes, especially in the last, about 1.5, 2 minutes of the third period, where there were just shots all over the place. And they were, throwing their bodies in front of shots and being able to help Frederik Andersen. And Andersen only had to make 25 to 26 saves to get the win. So you love to see a total team effort from the Hurricanes, especially after a slow start like that. But talk about a night for Jordan Martinook, though. Like, you can tell all game he was really on it. Like, he was really putting his body on the line to help the Hurricanes get the win. And even post-game, he even talked about, too, like how his job, he wants to make sure that pucks don't get to Frederik Andersen, and he wants to make sure he's helping out his team in any way he can. Even if he's not on the score sheet, He wants to be able to help contribute any way he can. But talk about a night for him. One goal, obviously, was the shorthanded goal that ended up being the game winner. Got an assist on the Seth Jarvis empty netter to ice it 3-1. So, and it was a +2 on the night, threw 2 hits, had 5 shots in the game as well. Talk about just an absolute, just gutting it out for him. And he did all this in 14 minutes and 38 seconds in that game. But just an overall, that's a game you love to see from, Jordan Martinook. And just being able to put himself out there. And he even had a block shot, which I think he had more than one block shot, but hey, they're only registered 1. I think he at least had 2 or 3. But just for the fact that you have 5 shots for him, even Jordan Stahl was putting a bunch of shots up as well. You thought he was due. You thought Eric Robinson was due. Jackson Blake almost scored. It's just the team was really putting it on there. But you look at Jordan Martinook's game, and he's not a guy that's going to show up on the score sheet all the time, but he will definitely show up, in certain places. And there's certain parts of the year where he gets really hot, especially January and February. But this was a game where it's like he really put himself out there, really took control. Like I said, you're talking about a guy who had 5 shots on net, which you might get like 2 or 3, but the fact he put up 5. Put the effort that he had, threw some hits, played 14 minutes and 38 seconds of total ice time. That's including PK, 5-on-5, and all that stuff. And the thing is, he's on a line with Jordan Stahl that's mainly known to be the shutdown line of the other team's best forwards. And they basically, for the most part, did that all game. Like I said, Brott only scored on a weird rebound that was initially shot by Eric Holland, just, right place, right time for them. But to be able to lock it down as an entire team, throughout the course of the game, and then, like I said, you look at Martinook just selling the body. Even on one of the penalty kills, there was a loose puck, and he could have tried to skate to it, but he wasn't going to get there in time, so he just dove full body Superman style and knocked the puck out of the zone with one hand. And that's what you call selling yourself to make the play done, and that's what it was. And then later on, you see him just go down to the other side of the ice on Markstrom, and absolutely with a great snipe, just goes top cheddar in the right corner over Markstrom's shoulder, and then that's ended up being your game-winning goal on a shorthanded marker after Shane Gostisbehere was able to pick up an initial rebound as well and roof it over Markstrom, which barely tucked under the bar. And just the reactions of the Gostisbehere goal is crazy, because if you look at the photos of the video, Ghost and Jarvis and even Aho were all just like, oh my gosh, there's no way that just happened. But they were just shocked that went in. And of course, the Lenovo Center is absolutely rocking after that. Then, of course, you're absolutely losing your minds because, Jordan Martinook is a fan favorite among all the fans for just his personality and his style of play, for being a third line guy who's mainly known for his defensive side of the game. But when he scores, that just sends the place into a frenzy. And that was probably I thought the opening hype video with the team coming on the ice, I thought that was loud. Lenovo Center gets really loud, but it was exceptionally loud last night, especially for going into the game. You thought it was loud. Then when Jordan Martinook scored his shorthanded goal, I'm surprised the roof even stood up on the place. I thought the walls are going to come down on the arena. That's how loud it was. But that just goes to show how much he's loved in Carolina, for the fact that his hard-nosed style of play, the way he plays his game defensively, but then when he is able to cash in on the score sheet as well, that goes a long way. That's why you can definitely tell he's very well loved in Carolina. That's why he signed a 3-year contract to stay here. But just an overall great night from him. You'd love to see it. And that's kind of an impactful night where depth goes a long way, especially in the playoffs. And you have a guy like Jordan Martinook who goes and does that, where he gets an assist on the Jarvis goal to ice it 3-1, but then be able to get him to get the game winner on a shorthanded marker. It goes to show just the preparation that Tim Gleason puts into his PK units, that, even shorthanded, that could be a very dangerous group, especially with Jarvis and Aho. When you get a guy like Martinook contributing like that as well, there's nothing you can do but smile and just appreciate the effort that these guys put in. And just an overall great night by Marty. Love to see it from him. And, something about the Devils, man. That's 7 consecutive playoff games with a point for him. Absolutely crazy, but you just love to see it from Jordan. Another guy who showed out, well, that'd be Mr. Andersen himself, Frederik Andersen. And we're going to talk about how great he was once again here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NBA playoffs are almost here. Well, they actually are here, but more importantly, NHL playoffs are here. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to a segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Well, we talked about Jordan Martinook and his phenomenal game, but what about Mr. Andersen, Mr. Frederik Andersen in the net, the great Dane himself? Well, in his first ever consecutive start this season, yes, like he has not had consecutive starts this whole year. You have to go back to last playoff where he had consecutive starts. Of course, he missed some games this year and stuff like that, due to injury, but, then it was kind of on off again, with the Hurricanes because he only got 22 starts, 13, 8, and 1. But, you go look at the playoffs and, not bad for Mr. Andersen. I know last year he was 6-4, 262 goals against, an 895 save percentage. We look back at the 22-23 playoffs where he went 5-3 with a 183 and a 927 save percentage. Not bad, especially when you look at how close that Eastern Conference final was. But how about in 2 games for Frederik Andersen? How about a 1 goal against and a 960 save percentage in 119 minutes and 33 seconds of ice time? Oh my goodness, Mr. Andersen. How about game 1, 24, he had, 24 shots that he was able to take care of, a 958 save percentage. And then he stops 25 of 26 in game 2 with a 962 goals against average. Yeah, he's averaging 1 goal a game, but he's had a plus 950 save in his last 2 games. Just an absolute dominant performance on him again. Like outside of the weird Brock goal and, the goal he gave up, in game 1, he's been absolutely dialed in for the Canes. And I asked him, post-game, what's it like just being able to be, have the confidence in team in front of you is just to make your kind of you don't have to worry too much. It's kind of an easier night. And he's basically said it's, just being able to, have confidence in them and knows that the team is really good and, they can pick up when they need to and just, be able to work together as a group. And even Martinook said it's even when we have lulls in our game, he's there to shut the door. And you can definitely tell how much this group loves Freddie Andersen, the fact that he can just come out there and do the job and be able to just do his thing where it's the regular season, you might see him have some great games here. It might be a game or two where it's okay, stuff happens to certain goalies. But when you get to the playoffs, somehow Frederik Andersen just comes to the next level, especially for the Hurricanes. And just for what he's done in the postseason this year already in 2 games, it just shows how much of a brick wall he is when the team really needs him the most. Because you're talking about slamming the door on the Devils, where in game 2 there was at least a good 4 or 5 different chances where they could have gotten some rebounds, and he was right there, putting himself into a good spot. Just to go from one side of the crease to the other very fast, being able to make the saves when he needs to, freezing the puck when he needs to do it as well. It's just the calm demeanor of Andersen that just makes you realize, man, even in the most tightest of moments where you see the Devils are it's 2-1, you're trying to shut them down, and you do for the most part, and it's just you don't really see him get phased. He doesn't get rattled. You're not seeing him, being like Jacob Markstrom and trying to slash guys and be physical and be a hothead. Which, for the second time, he tried to slash Svechnikov and caught the ref, which is insane. Of course, nothing happened, but. When we look at Andersen, it's just he's so dialed in and so calm, cool, collected. It's just his demeanor. It makes the guys in front of him realize, hey, even if we, we could be playing really good all game, but maybe if there's a couple lapses in, coverage or, the structure or something happens, you have Frederik Andersen back there to back you up. And that goes a long way to know that they can have a guy like Freddie be back there and do his job. So just for him to go out for a second consecutive game, only letting in 1 goal and having another plus .950 save percentage is absolutely insane. You're talking about a 958 and then an over a 960 in 2 games. just talk about a goalie who's absolutely dialed in and frustrating the Devils. Because like I said, you've scored 2 goals in 2 games for New Jersey. And, it talks about just even in the most heightened of moments, crazy, situations where you could definitely tell that Timo Meier had like 4 or 5 different chances to put the puck on net, but he whiffs or clunks it. Or, other guys who had the opportunities to get a wide open shot and miss up somehow, or, they get the puck on net, but Anderson's right there to stop it. Like, he stood on his skull and brains to keep the Hurricanes within that lead, and he did that because even with the onslaught the Devils were putting on late in that third period to try the game up, he was able to shut the door and give them the opportunity that was necessary for Martinook to find Jarvis, for him to go down and put the empty netter in to ice it 3-1. With less than a minute left. It just gives the aura of no matter what's going to happen, I'm going to be right there to back you guys up. And nothing against Piotr. Piotr does a great job as well. I mean, we all know Piotr's been great all season. He did, once again, for the second consecutive year, had to do bulk of the load in the regular season. And, he's going to get a start eventually in the playoffs. But just how rock solid Freddie's been in net. We talked about, like, do you go back and forth? Do you swap them off? Do you go with a hot hand? And now, I mean, you're talking about you got the next game is Friday. So you got Wednesday, Thursday off. So then it's like, okay, do you go back to Freddie for game 3? Do you go to Piotr? Because, Rod even said it too. Like, you don't want to, because they know how great Freddie's been, but they also don't want to overload him with too much work too, because, he's been swapping off with Kochekov since he came back from his injury. So it's like, this was his first consecutive starts since the playoffs last year. So it's like, do you want to put more pressure on him for a third consecutive start, or do you give it to Piotr so he doesn't get cold and he's not sitting for too long? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I mean, I don't think, however, the Hurricanes want to go with game 3 and they figure out what they're going to do with Anderson. At least they know, like, hey, if we do go back with you for a third consecutive game, we have so much confidence in you to get the job done, because that's what you saw from him out of game 2. Like I said, you're looking at a netminder who's absolutely on fire right now with getting a 950 plus save percentage in 2 straight games and finding a way to just do the job. And you just feel so good about yourself, and the fact that you keep continuously upping your game for Frederik Andersen, and now you're instilling so much confidence into the Hurricanes of being able to, lean on you more and more as the postseason goes along. Because now you're up 2-0 in New Jersey. You got so much pressure on those guys to go into game 3 that if New Jersey loses that first one at home, now you have a stranglehold on the series, and now you got their backs up against the wall with game 4. It's an opportunity for you to, get in their heads a little bit more and be like, if we don't win this one at home in game 3, it's going to be a tough hole to climb out of. And that's something that's really good for the Hurricanes. Yes, I know their road record doesn't really show how great their season was, but with the momentum they have and just the pressure they're putting on the Devils, who knows? They could find a way to take one of those in that one. Because I predicted the Kings in 5, and I still feel like that we might get a Kings in 5, because sweeping is extremely tough. And just how game 2 was, I don't think we're going to see a sweep here. But if the Hurricanes at least take one of those 2 games in New Jersey and come back to Carolina for game 5, I have so much confidence in this team and in Frederik Andersen that they're going to get the job done in 5. And move on to round 2 and face either Washington or Montreal. But just the way Frederik Andersen played in this game, yeah, you're going to get Piotr back at some point, because you're going to have to give him some games because you don't want him to sit for too long. But you also don't want to overwork Freddie. But even with the 2 days off, I think it'll be either way how it plays out. You feel good about where you're at as a Carolina Hurricanes fan. And if you're the Carolina Hurricanes team, knowing that either goal you're going to be fine with. But if you go with Frederik Andersen again, you're feeling really good about yourselves going into game 3 on Friday night against New Jersey. Now, Rod Brind'Amour talked for over 10.5 minutes with the media. We're not going to play the whole thing, but there's one particular clip with me asking Rod Brind'Amour about Jordan Martinook. I think it's something that's really, you get some really good insight of how much Rod really appreciates Jordan Martinook in his game. So stick around as we'll listen to and give my thoughts on it. here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crackin a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Now, like I said, Rod Brind'Amour post-game did over 10.5 minutes of media. Can't really play all 10.5 minutes because that'd be very, very long. But I think the one part we definitely need to focus on, of course, we're talking about Jordan Martinook and Frederik Andersen. I think it's my question that I put to Rod Brind'Amour, talking about Jordan Martinook and how Rod always preached about when it comes to guys being off the score sheet that makes just as inful impacts as guys on the sheet. So I want to get his thoughts on Jordan Martinook be able to get rewarded for his efforts. So without further ado, let's listen to Rod right now.
You always preach about guys doing more off the score sheet than on the score sheet. When you see like a guy like Jordan Martinook being able to finally cash in on the score sheet as well against the Devils once again, how does that feel for you seeing one of your leaders using his defensive game, making a better offensive game too?
Well, it's huge, and he was, I can't think of enough good things to say about that game in particular. It might have been his most impactful game, as a Hurricane. I mean, he's had a bunch, especially in big moments, but just obviously the goal is huge, and then but if you watch, there was tons of block shots. They play even at the end of the game. Special play there to get the empty netter. So he was all over this game for us.
Big thank you to Rod Brind'Amour and the Carolina Hurricanes as always. Yes, I know it's a shorter clip than usual. Just kind of wanted to cherry pick that one specifically. And just because of the fact, like I said, I talked about in segment 1 of how impactful Jordan Martinook was. And that's the one thing that Rod always preaches whenever, being able to go in and do these in person and, get his thoughts, in the post game. And you hear from him, like he's talked about in other press conferences too that I've been a part of, where he always preaches about it's the guys that aren't showing up on the score sheet that still do their job is what's really impactful for the Hurricanes. Because to Rod, it's like it doesn't matter if you're on the score sheet for me, as long as you're doing your job and helping the Canes win with your role or just your impact, then that's all that really matters to him. But if you're on the score sheet, I mean, obviously that's fantastic because you want to score a goal, you want to get assists. But even if you're not scoring the goal, but you're setting up the guy for the assist, or maybe you're the guy that had the breakout to start that play, that's great for him too. But just being able to see Martinook be rewarded for his efforts, I think that goes a long way for Rod. And I think that really, you heard it from him. It's just like that could be his most impactful game. And he's had a lot of them. When we're talking about a guy who put up 10 points against New Jersey in round 2 back in 2023, but just being able to see that be rewarded for his efforts in this game, even the fact that he is now on 7 consecutive games with a point against the Devils in the playoffs, but just being able to have a moment where you score a shorthanded goal in the top corner over Markstrom's shoulder to get the lead, which ended up being the game winner. Like, you have to be excited for Jordan Martinook and how that worked out for him. And just hearing it from Rod, you could definitely tell in his voice, the way, like, just watching his, how he was talking to him, it shows how much level of respect and just how much he appreciates Jordan for what he does, like with block shots, setting up passes, being a shutdown defensive forward, but also being able to, score when he needs to or accept the assist. It's that 200-foot game of Jordan Martinook and his leadership really goes a long way for Rod. I think that's when you're a coach and you see a guy like that who isn't popping out for 25, 30 goals a season or having 50, 60, 70-point seasons, but being able to be impactful at the right times and doing it the right way of how you want as a system and as a head coach, that it has to mean a lot, especially for a guy like Rod Brind'Amour, who, wasn't, a flashy scorer himself. I mean, he does have a bunch of points and stuff like that, but he was definitely known as that, defensive forward who won back-to-back Selkies, should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. But just to see, him appreciate what Martinook has done goes a long way. I think that's something that was really impactful. Just seeing how a coach just, talks about his guys like that, especially ones where like Jordan, where, yeah, he's not on the score sheet consistently, but when he does, it goes a long way, and it's a very impactful finish. So you love to see, and I just love that reaction from Rod, just being able to talk about Marty in a way where it's like, yeah, it was super impactful, like, off the score sheet, on the score sheet, and it's good to see that. It's like, yeah, he does all the right things off the score sheet. Now he finally got rewarded with it on the score sheet, and that's all you can ask for. And that's what definitely went a long way for the Hurricanes. Like I said, his game-winning goal, helped the team get a 2-0 series lead, and he got the assist on the Seth Jarvis goal to ice the game with less than a minute left. That's the type of impact you want to see, and that's why depth is so important for the Hurricanes, not just for them, but just in the playoffs in general. Great teams who win cups need depth, and the Hurricanes have probably one of the best depths in the entire playoffs, and they're the most healthiest form of this group that they've had in a couple years. So even after a slow start, they were able to dig deep and fight their way back to get the lead and eventually ice it. And now you got all the pressure on New Jersey going into Game 3. So this is going to be a very interesting series and an interesting playoff for the Hurricanes, where you're looking at a team who's fully healthy, have a lot of extra, healthy extras that they can turn to if they need be, but you're getting contributions up and down the lineup of, you got your defense scoring, you got, Martinook and those guys scoring too, and you got, Seth scoring an empty netter, and, Svetch scored an empty netter, and Logan Stankoven put up 2 goals, and, Taylor Hall put up 2 assists in Game 1. Once you get Aho and Blake and Jarvis Foley going too, in terms of on top of everyone else that's kind of rolling around for the Canes, this could be a team that's going to be very, very tough to beat in the playoffs. So, like I said, I don't think this is going to be a sweep. I mean, if it is, hey, that's fantastic. You'd love to see it, but I can definitely see it if this Hurricanes team keeps playing as well as they do, and at least split the series in New Jersey for games 3 and 4 and come back to Lenovo Center for Game 5. I have no doubt this team is really going to, close this thing out. But this is that type of game where even in a slow start, you find a way to dig back, and that's what makes great teams great. Is, yeah, even with starts that aren't great or perfect, you're able to find a way to come back and win them, and that's all that really matters. So it definitely will be interesting on Friday, where you see the Hurricanes play the Devils in Game 3 and kind of looking at, all right, can they put a stranglehold on the series and put the Devils' backs against the wall once again? So it should definitely be interesting on Friday. But overall, great game on Tuesday night. Hurricanes winning 3-1. Great night by Jordan Martinook. Goal and assist, game winner on the shorthand, and then Frederik Andersen stopping 25-26 for another win and another 960 save percent, which is absolutely insane. But you love to see it. But guys, help you Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Game Night. This game every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to keep up with me, I'm on One True Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where you can find all of my links to my articles and my podcast. If you want to check out my written content for the Carolina Hurricanes, well, go to thehockeywriters.com to find it all there. If you want to check out my other podcasts, well, it's the Searchcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For this show, well, Locked On Hurricanes is on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen. Follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, well, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Share with all other candidates to become everydayers just like you. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Wednesday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.